All right, so let's start with the session. Any queries or questions before we start with the session? Have you all finished trying this out? Hopefully, you'll have completed trying this one so that you know what I'm talking about then. All right. Just before in the earlier session, what we did was we have been hard coding the values here. Correct. So we've been writing code which always will show you certain hard-coded employees, certain hard-coded details, all right, irrespective of the ID that is being passed out here. Now, how do we sort of make it more correct, and how do we actually get in the values from the database? So let's start with this type of code. Like, for example, let's start with the index. Currently, what am I doing out here? I'm creating a list of employees and reading the values, or rather hard coding the values by adding it one by one. What would this code be substituted by? What, according to you, would you need to do to get the values from the database?
Run a select star on employee.
Yes. Carry on.
Okay. After that, we can add it to the, means we can create a list of employees from that and we can pass it to the view.
So if you've got a select star from employees, how will you read the values?
Using data reader.
SQL data reader.
Correct. So the two options you have, you could either use a data set or a data reader. Between the two, which is faster?
Data reader would be faster.
Data reader is the fastest possible way of reading records. We have called it a fire hose cursor, and that's what is the fastest. So yes, data reader is what you will be using here in this example. And again, go ahead. So what are you suggesting? He suggested that who's giving the answer? Who was this?
Siddesh Kadam.
Siddesh. So Siddesh suggested that you open a data reader, then you loop through the data reader, and one by one do what? Values from the data reader are being read and being added into a collection of employees.
Yes,
and then that collection then can be passed to the view out here. Now my question to you is, should I write down the code out here? Should I write all that code out here?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because it will be a part of model.
Correct. So keeping the separation of concerns, fundamental in mind, wherein we are saying that the controller should not be doing all of this. This should be done by the model, and this would have, the model would have not just data, but also operations on the data, functions that work on the data, which actually do the things for you. So I'll go back to my model. Right? And what would you need to have? You'd need to have a method that returns a collection of employees. Are we clear on this, everybody? You need to have a method that returns a collection of employees. So I could think of having something like this. Right? I could think of having something like this. What are the get all employees going to return to me now in this case?
List of employees.
List of employees. Are we clear on this, everybody? And populated from where? Populated from the database. Okay, now how do I call this method? Let's say, for example, let me just create a list of employee, whatever, LSDMs. I haven't written the database code. Okay, I'm going to ask you to help me with that. So how do I call this code now? What would I do to call get employees? Where would I call this one from? Yes,
In controller.
from the controller. Now you notice I made this static method. Why make it a static method? Reason for making it static.
We
can access it in
controller.
So I don't need to create an object of the employee class to call this method. I can call that method directly. So help me with the code now in the controller class. How would this code change? This is your earlier code, right? This is your earlier code. This is, I don't want this code. So help me with this. What would change out here? List of employee EMPS is equal to, how would this change? Yes.
Class name dot method name.
Employee dot get all employees.
Employee dot get all employees,
Get all employees.
right? And this would actually now work in this manner. So all the bulk of your code is now going to be shifted to your model class, right? Okay. Similarly here, now this is the older code. I don't want this code. Instead of this, what would I do now here? Help me with this code. Instead of new employee, what would this be?
Employee dot get employee and with the parameter ID.
Employee dot get employee, get a single employee, and which takes, okay, which takes a ID as a parameter. Are we clear on this? So if I have to write this function here, okay, I've called it get single employee in my example. I'll change that name. This is what I will need to do. Right? And here, of course, write the code to read it from the database and create this. Okay, I'm not completing this code. I would like you all to do this code for me. All right. And of course, the name now I've given it slightly different. Instead of get employee, I had to call it get single employee. So this is what would happen now. All right. Now, if you notice, this code was the same where the code for details was same where else? Two other places where details code is being repeated.
Create and edit.
In first thing is edit get. See, when you're saying again edit, there are two edits. There's the edit get and the edit post. So in the edit get, we're going to be writing the same code. So this would no longer be done this way. Instead, this is what we're doing. So that's your edit get code based on the ID that you're receiving out here. And similarly in the delete get as well. Again, this code will not be done and you're doing a get single employee. So if you write that code, this is now going to be repeated in multiple places. Right? Okay. So that takes care of displaying of the data. That takes care of the displaying of the data. Now that leaves out a couple of other things. Three other things. When he goes into create, firstly in the create get, do we need to do anything different? Does this code need to change in any way? Create get. What is create get currently doing? Showing him a blank screen. Do we need to do anything different here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
You agree with this? No difference. Initially, when he goes to create get, initially it shows him a blank screen. Correct?
Yes.
All right. And then when he does this, create post, HTTP post for create, then what do we do in this case? Because I've given you the values into employee. I've given you the values into employee. Now, what do we need to do after that?
You have to call
So save
add
it in
em-
database.
Say that again.
So save it in database.
All right. So how do you save it in the database? In fact, it tells you to do insert logic here. So what would this be now? Employee dot insert, for example, which takes a employee object as a parameter. Are we clear on this? So insert employee. I've just given some different names. I'm going to use the same names out here. So in my employee controller, I'm going to go and make a call to employee dot insert employee, which takes an employee as a parameter. Right. So the code that would be called here would be insert employee. Right. Okay, I don't know if you notice, and nobody's asked me this also, but there was a method out here called redirect to action. Any guesses? Firstly, what that means? Redirect to action index. What do you think that would do? Redirect to an action and the name of the action being index. What does that mean?
The index method inside controller.
Correct. So you are actually firing off a fresh request for index. You're redirecting to the index. And if you look at redirect to action was of type redirect to root result. Right? Redirect to root result. And if you look at redirect to root result, this was one of the classes that we saw earlier in the day, which is, inheriting from action result. So you're just specifying where to redirect. So after inserting a record, what is this line of code going to do? It's going to take you to the index page. And on the index page, what will you be doing? What are you doing on the index page? What are you showing on the index page? All the employees in any case. So that's what will be shown out here. Are we clear on this, everybody? So that's how they have written code. That is how the code that has been generated by Visual Studio. If you don't like that, you can change it. For example, instead of redirecting to another page, you can stay on the same page and show a message there saying that, record has been inserted. If you'd like to do that, you can do that as well. So what you want to do and how you want to flow from one page to the other, they are just suggesting it. They're not, it's not an enforced thing. You are free to change the code that they're giving you. This is the default code that is generated for you. So you all have to try this out. One is make a note of all the things that you try out. One is what are they doing by default? Redirecting to the index page. So instead of redirecting to the index page, I want to show a message out there at the bottom of the page saying that successfully inserted. I'd like to show a message on that same page, on the create page only, called successfully inserted. All right. How will you do that? How will you send a message from the controller to the view? How will you send something from the controller to the view?
View back.
In view back. So what you could do, effectively what you could do is, instead of saying redirect to action here, what are you doing here? You could say return view. What does return view do? Keep you back on the same view. But before returning the view, you could actually do something like this. View back dot, let's say message is equal to whatever, successfully inserted, whatever message that you want to type out. Are we clear on this, everybody? Okay, now if an exception is caught, what could be the reasons for exception? One possibility could be what? Simple, you're inserting a
Duplicate entry.
Primary key violation, foreign key violation, any other violation out here. So if an exception is caught, I could even do this exception EX and viewback.message is equal to what in this case?
EX.
Is equal to EX.message. Right? So two possibilities exist. No? What are the two possibilities? What are the two possibilities? Either succeeded or it's gone into the catch block. That means there was an exception. So I'm either giving a message of success or failure. And on the view, how will you display that? How will you display that viewback.message on the view?
@viewback.
@viewback.
Don't forget your previous fundas. You'll have tried this before. So @viewback.message would simply display that message to you. Are we getting this, everybody? So that's how you could actually pass the value from the controller to the view. I'm asking you to try this also. I'm not saying do only this. What is the default code that they have given you? Default code they're giving you is what? If you insert successfully, then go to the index page. I'm asking you to control and to decide how you want that flow to go. So get a little comfortable in doing this. Don't just use the code that they give you. Be confident enough to change the flow according to what you want. Are we clear on this? All right, here in this case, supposing the ID is not found. Supposing the ID is not found. Then what do you want to do? Two possibilities exist in the, when he gives an ID in the URL, he might give an ID which is there in the database, or he might give an ID which is not there in the database. So what would you want to do when it is not there?
Another
What do you-
viewback with message.
Throw message.
Through an exit.
You can either throw in message, you can give a message, ex.message, viewback.message saying that, it's not present out there. That is one possibility. Second possibility, 404. 404. HTTP not found. I couldn't find that page. Give a proper ID for me to look at and show you the record out there. So what you do with it, all the things, little snippets that I'm giving you, don't just learn them, use them. I've shown you on day one of what we did, of how you can throw a HTTP not found. So whatever status code you want to throw, you can try throwing that status code. You can return that status code if you do it in if else. So how do you know that it's there or not? If obj is null, if obj returns null, it means it is not there. If obj is not null, then it is there. So you could return it that way. So customize this code according to what you want. You can make it, it's just now, all this is just logic. All this, I cannot teach you this code. All this is just logic. How you implement that code is up to you. I can give you, okay, there is a 404. I can give you HTTP not found. There is a, you can do that. But what are you going to do to use it, or in what case? Decide that yourself and see how you can write down code on this. So try out various options. Try out different combinations with the information that you have. We will be adding on to more information as we go along. Okay. All right. Let's take this further. So this was inserting a record out here. Okay. Secondly, what else? In the edit, one part of it was displaying the value, and then he goes and updates the value. When he updates the value, what are you doing out here? You're receiving the value here as employee object, and instead of doing a insert employee, what could you do out here? Instead of doing a insert employee, what could you do there?
Update employee.
Update employee. So first thing is to begin with, in the model class, you need to have an update employee. All right. You need to have an update employee, and then in here, in the employee controller, what would we do? Where's it gone? Edit here. So instead of an insert employee, is doing a update employee. All right, again the same logic. If successful, then what are they doing right now? By default, they are taking it back to the index page. If you want, you can change that logic and on the same page show them successfully updated. Right, so that takes care of this. In the delete again, the get for delete is this. In the post for delete, now what you need out here, you need the ID. You need the ID out here. So I'm going to start with writing a method out here in the employee class, which has what? Delete employee, which takes an employee number as a parameter. Okay. And from the employee controller, all that we're doing here is what? Instead of update employee, this now takes what? Delete employee, but that takes a ID as a parameter. Right. Again, what are they doing by default? By default, what is being done here is redirect to action index. This is their default way of working with it. So you can change it. Maybe one method you can do it different, one method you can do it different. However you would like to work with this. Are we clear on this? Okay. Now, I purposely don't want to, show you the code. I can actually write the code for the database there, but I don't want to do that. I want you all to implement that code. So what I'll do here is in my code out here, where I'm actually returning this. I'm assuming that these are the values in the database. I'm assuming that these are the values in the database. So what will this actually give me? This will actually right now give me the same 4 hard-coded values right now, because I don't want to spoil it for you. I want you all to implement that code for the database. Read from the, your data reader and put the values into this. I'd like you all to try that code out. So if you look at this code now, this is currently returning the same details, same 4 details. Again, if I do return single employee, right now, again, I'm hard coding the values. Okay, right now I'm hard coding the values based on what I've got out here. Okay, so all my employees are going to be called Vikram. All of them have the same basic salary. All of them have the same department number. Now let's try and see how this code now runs. Okay, I don't have any code in insert, update, and delete. So right now there is no insert, update, delete happening. Leave it at that. But at least my display part of it should come correct. So when I run this code now that I've moved the methods to my model class, let's see what all is happening and what all would I need to do to get it functional. What are the problem areas that I'm facing here and how do I get them to work? Firstly, to begin with, index shows up, right? Index shows up. Now, one thing that we didn't do or we didn't keep a check for is, for example, if I said now employee number 2 out here, and if I give details, right? If I give details here, look at the URL on the top. What is being taken as? It's being taken as what? It's being just taken as details. Now, what should be actually happening is when I click on this, it should actually take me to details/2. What is 2 out here? What is 2 out here?
ID.
The employee number, right? The employee number. Or for example, if I click on this guy 3 and I click on details, it should actually be taking me to employee details/3. And there from the database, it should pick up the correct value and show it to me out. So this is what should be happening, but which is not happening out here. So let's examine this. Now, where is this getting created? In which view is this getting created? Where all of this is being shown? What view are we looking at right now?
Index.
The index. So let's examine the index. Right? Let's open the index view. And if you open the index view, which part of the code is generating those hyperlinks for you? Which part of the code? Give me the line number which is generating the hyperlink for you.
44, 45, 46.
44, 45, 46. Now let me focus on details. Let me do one at a time on details and see what the action link, what it takes as a parameter. So what are the first thing in the action link? At the HTML.action link. What is the first thing it takes as a parameter? Can you see this down here? Look at the screen at the bottom. What is this?
Link text.
Link text. Link text is what should be shown here. So display this out here. This is what will be displayed. Second parameter is action name. So when I click on this, what action should it go to? All right. And there are overloads here. There are overloads out here. Like, look at this overload. What is this taking now? What is this taking? Action name and what else? Last parameter.
Controller name.
Controller name. So what if your action was in a different controller? What if your action was in a different controller? Then you will give the controller name as well. If you don't give that by default, and if you choose this one, what will it assume it to be? By default, it will assume it to be where? In the
Same controller.
All right. So there are a lot of overloads to this. Look at the different options. Don't look at only one. Look at the different options it's giving you. Now, one of the options, the second option, of course, was the action name. So action name, whatever the action name here. Okay. Pass the action name. Thirdly, of course, you can pass the controller name. And there is one more option here called object root values. So root is here. This is where you define the root. This is where you define the root. So what are the root values here? Controller, action, and what else are we passing the root? What are we passing here?
ID.
Is the ID. So this becomes a root value now. Now in the root value, see what they have given here. What have they given here? They are saying new something. What does new something do? New is what?
Creating an object.
Anonymous type. Right? You're creating an object of an anonymous type. New something. Isn't this how you're giving an anonymous type? And with this, they're saying ID equal to and give what should be the primary key. They've commented out that code. They've commented out that code. What does the code say? ID equal to item.primary key. So what is the item here in this case? What is the item here in this case?
Employee.
Very good.
One of the employees.
Very good. Very good. Model was IEnumerable of employee and item was an employee. So item dot will give you what?
All the
Item dot
properties
property.
of employee.
Correct. Now from there I want what? I want the employee. So now that employee number is being passed as the ID. Are you getting this, everybody? So this is how you're now passing it. So now I'm calling details. See, it's showing details. This is the link that it's showing. Let me call it get details just to distinguish. When you click on get details, what will it show you now? Which action is it taking you to? To details. And to that action, what are we passing now? To that action, what are we passing? ID equal to so and so. So whatever you want to pass through it can be given in here in the new so and so. This is the root values that you're giving out. Are you clear on this, everybody? So I don't need this other action. I was just trying to explain to you. So now see the difference now. When I just do this, let's see the difference. Let's go back to the controller and run it in debug mode. So look at the URL. Look at the URL that will be formed. Okay, when I click on that. So I don't know whether you can see this, but look at the bottom of the screen. Look at the top bottom left corner of the screen. When I move my mouse pointer on that, do you see what it's showing you? Details /1. Second one, details /2. Next one, details /3, and so on and so forth. So where is this slash whatever coming in from? This is coming in from the root values. This is what we have actually set out there. Acha, why get details? Earlier it was details. I changed that to get details. So what should be the text shown out there? So this is what you are getting out here. Are we clear on this? Now see what would happen. If I click on employee number 2, get details, it takes me properly to employee number 2. Now once I have the ID correct, then this will be picked up correctly. Are you getting this? Now I have done it only for details. Similar thing you'll have to do for what? For edit also. So if I click on edit right now, it's only passing edit. Right now it's only passing edit. It should again do what? Edit / whatever the employee number that it's passing. So help me with this. Tell me what all would I need to do again in the index page. It's very similar to code to what we did. What will I need to do again here for all of them? Yes. Same way. Item dot employee number. Same way for all of them. Are we clear on this? And this would now get those links functional. All right, let's try running this. So now you should be able to go anywhere by clicking on that. It should take you correctly. Check out your URL on top, whether it's coming correct. If that's coming correct, then you've done it correctly below. So for example, now if I can get into details, let's say for employee number 3. So it should show me employee number 3, but the name right now, of course, is, Vikram is everywhere because I've hard coded to Vikram. This will be replaced with your values from the database when you write down the code for it. I'm not going to write code for that. Whose database is it? Whose database is it? Yours, no? So why do you want me to write code for it? All right. Who's going to get the marks for it? You are. So why should I write marks for it? The code for it. So you're going to fill in those details. But this is working now. You're getting I'm giving you the correct details. If I go to delete, for example, this is employee number 4. Of course, right now it's just showing you Vikram everywhere. So you're going to change that value. You're going to change that in the code and read it from the database. Are we clear on this, everybody? Okay, now questions, if any. Questions, if any. What was
Yes,
the...
sir.
Yes.
Here for details, the parameter needed is int.
Employee
So
number.
why we are creating the object with new?
Why are we creating?
The object, like in
Object
action
of
tag.
what? You want me to go to the index?
Yeah, this action
So
link.
this is not an object. This is the root that you're creating. Root.
Okay.
So these are the parameters of the root. These are the parameters that the root is taking. What is the root is? Root is another word for root is what is your URL.
URL.
So what is the name of the parameter in the URL? It was called ID, no?
Yes.
So I'm saying ID. Now I don't know what the root could be. In a different project, the root name could be different. Instead of calling it ID, it could have been called EMP ID. Supposing here in my root, instead of calling it ID, what if I had called it EMPNO? Supposing I had called it EMPNO. So what all changes would you need now? Firstly, your method will now receive what? EMPNO.
EMP.
First thing, your method will receive a variable called EMPNO. Secondly, in here, instead of saying ID equal to, now you will say what? EMPNO equal to.
Okay.
Are you getting
Yes.
this?
Yes.
So this depends on your root. What is the name of the variables in the root that you're using? Those are the variables you're passing. So what it does is it says, I don't know what your root variables are. So create an anonymous class which contains the same properties as the names of the variables in your root. That's what this is doing.
Yeah, yes, sir, got it. Because I thought that we are passing the value for ID here.
This
Initial.
is the name of the variable of the root. That's all that I'm saying.
Yeah, yes,
So
sir.
would depend on what you named your variable in the root. And is there a possibility I can pass more than one?
Yeah, it's
I
possible.
can have more than one. I could say in an anonymous class, what can you do? You say comma and you say whatever param2 equal to whatever value you want to pass out there. You could do that also.
Yes, sir.
So what if your root required more than one parameter? What if your primary key was not one key, but a composite key? So in a composite key, you will need two values.
Yes.
So like this, you can pass that, which is why they have kept it as an anonymous type. They're saying now, whatever properties you want to pass, whatever root values you want to pass them out here.
Yes, sir. Understood.
All right, so let me go back to the root config, and this was not employee number, this was ID. Okay. Yes, any other questions? Is our code working correctly? Is it working properly? If it's working properly, then we move on. If it's not working properly, then we'll identify the problem and solve it. Is it working properly? Have you all tried a code? Have you all tested the code? Have you all tried it enough? Or you'll just copy pasted my code and it's working. Chalo. What 2 hours he gave us? Unnecessarily 2 hours he gave us to work on this. We've done in 20 minutes. 1.5 hours I can have a nap. So what? Is it working? Is it working perfectly? Is this code working perfectly? Is it working the way you want it to work? Yes, no, what?
We were writing the object in the side.
Okay, I could only get words in between. I could not hear you very clearly, but I think you're giving the right answer. So if you don't mind, can you repeat what you said?
So we could not get the object details in the post side. We were getting
Correct,
0, 0,
correct. That is what I was looking out for. Who's that? Akshay answered?
Yes, sir. Akshay.
Yeah, fine. So thank you, Akshay, for giving me that answer. Then I can explain this. Otherwise, I was not going to explain it only. So this is what Akshay found out, right? This is what Akshay found out, that let's start with create. Let's start with edit and show you what values came in here. So when you went to create. So I just want to quickly take you through the code out here and show you what happened here. Of course, this code is currently not functional. So when you went to create and you pass the value, let's say I passed employee number 1, right? Whatever values you passed out here, and you said create, and you came down to the code out here, you'll find that this object contained all the values. It contained all the values. Are we clear on this? It contained all the values out here. So whatever values I had given were given. And then once you've contained all the values, then you can of course go and write down the code for this insert employee, which is very simple. So that part is easy. Right? Okay. What if I did this for edit as well? One second. My laptop charging suddenly has gone for a toss. Anyway, so in edit, now this is functional. I can go to employee number 2. And let's say I change this guy's salary. So let's say whatever, Vikram 2, Vikram 1, 2, 3, department number 10, and I said save. So when I go into edit, again here, your object actually is getting all the correct values here. So no problem with that as well. right? And of course, you're coming back to index, no issues there. But when you go to delete, so let's say, for example, I take employee number 4. All right, employee number 4 has come in correctly, and I got Vikram 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't change the value here. But when I go to delete and I click on delete, your ID came in correctly. ID came in at 4. So that worked fine. But the employee object did not reflect the correct values. All right. So you'll notice that nothing was there in employer. It's all blank values. I mean, it's actually showing you null for name and then the default values for the employer. So it was not able to pick this up. So this was the problem. This was the problem. I don't know how many of you all identified the problem. But my question to you is, why does this happen? You only delete, it doesn't work. For edit, it works fine. And for create also, it worked fine. So why didn't it work for delete? Does anyone know the answer to this? Have you all figured out the answer? Using, you could have asked your best friend also. Who's your best friend in here? Who's the
Google.
best friend?
Viewing spec source.
Page source.
Using page source. So has anyone found out the answer to that? Identified the Akshay has currently identified the problem. Well done. But what is the solution to that problem? Or why is it happening? Any guesses?
Because we don't want the full object delete, we can delete
No.
on the basis.
Because we don't want the full object. I'm asking you, why are you not getting it?
Because of name.
But that is not the answer to my question. No? Why are you not getting it? Yeah, you can get it and choose not to do anything with it. So you should not tell me I'm not getting the full object because I don't need it. You didn't write any of that code. Somebody else generated the code for you. So why are you not getting the full object?
Because we are not passing from previous page.
Because we are not passing
From previous page.
All right, let me explain what is happening here. Let's look at create. In create, what was there? What was there here? HTML dot
Begin form.
begin form. So what does this do? In HTML, what does it do? What tag does it add?
Form tag.
Form tag. And where does it end? Ends here. So there's a slash form here. Now between form and slash form, whatever are your input types, those would be submitted to the server. Are we getting this? Whatever between form slash form, whatever are your input types, those would be submitted to the server. Which among these are generating input types? Which among these are generating input types?
Editor for.
Editor for, excellent answer. So all of these are generating input types. Plus there's one more input type. Which is the other input type?
Submit.
Button wala.
Type equal to
Button
submit.
tag.
So there are 5 things that are being submitted. What are the 5 things?
4 properties.
4 properties and the submit button.
Submit.
This is what is being submitted. There's one more thing also being submitted. I'll talk about that later. But these are the 5 that you can easily identify. Correct? Same thing is there in edit also. Edit also has the same form. If you compare the code for edit and create, you'll find that it is giving you identical code. So in edit also, what is there? Begin form. You got these editor fors for here. Okay, all of these editor fors. Then you got to submit and then your end form here. So this is also being submitted. But if you look at delete, where is your begin form happening? Where is your begin form happening? Which line number?
48.
48.
48. And what is there in the begin form?
Only the submit button.
Only delete button.
Only the submit
Sorry,
button.
delete button. Delete.
Yeah, correct. The submit button which has text of delete. That is the only thing that is there. So what would be submitted now? What would be submitted now? Only the submit button. The other 4 properties are not going to be submitted. This is not something new that I'm telling you. This you know from HTML days. From HTML days you have learned this. Whatever is between form/form, whatever input types are there, those are the values that are going to be submitted. What is the prerequisite? It needs to be an input type and it needs to have a name. If it doesn't have a name, that also will not work. It needs to have a name. Correct? So now, because you are not getting all these other values inside the form, therefore it is not working. So what if I move my begin form? In here, somewhere in here? Will it now work?
No,
Will it
sir.
now work?
No, sir.
Yes, no?
No, sir.
Why
No,
not?
sir.
Why not?
Because
Now I got all these inside my begin form. No? Form begins here. All these controls are there here. Then the action link, and then the submit button, and then the close form.
So they are not inputs.
Correct. So let's even now look at what delete is. And for this, again, we're going to help our, ask for help from our best friend. So let's go to delete. Right? Let's go to delete. And even if I move that form on top, okay, even if I move my form on top, this is where the form began. But what are all these? Are these input types here?
No.
No. The form ended here somewhere, here. So the only input type here was submit. Are we getting this, everybody? So to get the value, see, how did you get the value into that employee object? You got it through binding, through model binding. Model binding simply says that whatever values are submitted, if they have the same name as your properties, then the object will automatically be created. That is what is automatically happening for you. But now here in this case, the values are not being submitted. So what can I do on the delete page? Where's my delete page? So that didn't work. Okay, that begin form didn't work. Moving it from bottom to the top didn't work. So what could I do here to make it work? How do I ensure that these values are submitted to the server? What can I do to make it work? Let's say I want only the employee number to begin with. What can I do?
you can use hidden input attributes.
Who said that?
Siddesh Kala.
Siddesh. Absolutely right. So you'll need to have an input type equal to something. So have an input type equal to hidden. Excellent answer, Siddesh. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
And by putting in an input type equal to hidden, the value will not be shown to you, but will be submitted to the server. So now you have these different HTML dot, right? HTML dot. So similarly, there's a HTML dot. There is a hidden for. And hidden for takes what? Again, you can say it takes a model and returns model dot whatever the value that you want to return. So let's start with employee number. And what is this going to do for me? What code will this generate for me? Input type equal to hidden, name equal to employee number, and then ID equal to employee number. And that's what it will actually do for me. Are we getting this? So anywhere between your form and end form, anywhere between that, generate these. Let's try the same thing again. And what are we trying to do here? That employee OBJ should get the values. Right now, which values are we passing to it? Right now?
Employee number.
Employee number. So when I now click on delete, ID of course was being passed. There's no problem there. But employee number now contains employee number 4. And if you wanted other properties, what will you need to do again? Similarly,
Hidden type.
what?
Hidden type for all properties.
Create hidden types for all properties. whatever properties you want. All right. Now here, of course, the ID worked, so you didn't need to do all of this. But there will be situations wherein only passing the ID may not be enough. You may want other objects also. You may want other values also. And that's what you'll need to do. Either you explicitly create a control that has that input type equal to whatever, or you create a input type equal to hidden. And that would actually get that field. And then I could now use obj.employee number out here instead of using the ID. Where is the ID coming in from? Where is the ID coming in from? How did it get the ID? How did this value come in?
URL.
Correct. So this is using binding from the value coming in from the URL. And this here is, of course, is picking it up from your form/form. Are we clear on this? All right. So that is one thing that I wanted to add to this. Let me quickly, I didn't show you that out here. I didn't show you this. We should have seen the view page source, and in the form/form now, this is your form. Okay. This is the form. Let me copy paste this so that I can show it in an easier manner. So that was your form. Okay, this is what we have. So you got your input type equal to submit, value equal to delete. You got this. You got your input name equal to employee number and type equal to hidden. You got this. Where did this come in from? Request verification token. Well, where did this come in from? I didn't add this. I didn't add this. Where did this come in from? And this also is a hidden variable. Where is this coming in from? Any idea where this is coming in from? Where is this coming in from? Right? I have no clue where this could be coming in from. Where could it be coming in from? Any guesses? Yes, please.
Action result.
The anti-forgery token. So it adds an anti-forgery token. It ensures that, it's not code that will be generated by a bot. And it checks that, this is a valid request that's actually coming in here. So this is one of the security mechanisms here. Just by adding an anti-forgery token, you notice that it added a hidden field out there, which when the request comes in, it checks the value in the hidden field. It does a checksum on that and sees whether the value that is coming in from a valid, request, or whether people are just spamming you. So that's what actually this is actually taking care of. Are we clear on this? So that was the anti-forgery token. Elsewhere also, wherever you are having a begin form, elsewhere also they've added this anti-forgery token. And you'll notice that everywhere it's actually creating those hidden variables for you. Are we clear on this? All right. So
repeat once, sir.
Yes.
Repeat once.
I'm saying that when a request is sent, right? How do you identify whether this is a valid request or not? Whether it's coming from a valid source or not? Is it coming from, an actual browser where people have first downloaded it and then are submitting a value? Is it coming from there, or is it coming from maybe a spammer trying to spam your site with requests, or someone trying to crack into your site by just sending you requests and trying to figure out, maybe for example, username and password? They're just having a program running which is trying to send you various requests and seeing which of these requests comes back successful. So to validate against this, you have this anti-forgery token. And this anti-forgery token generates a hidden variable which checks the checksum of the request and says that this is a valid request coming in from a valid source. And this is how this is internally being kept track of. We are not doing that, but this is one of the security measures that it implements.
Okay.
Are we clear on this?
Sir, how does it come to know whether it is valid or not?
It has its own algorithm. The values that are being received, right? It would check with these with its own algorithm. These are all encrypted values. And it says, okay, there was some ID that was sent to it. And when it comes back, see, how did he get that page? He got the page by first performing a request. He did a get. Then when he got the get, he got the page. Then from that get, he is now sending the values to the post. So when he's sending the post, it's just checking whether the ID is matching or not. What algorithm it uses, obviously, will not be known to you. Okay?
Okay, sir.
All right. So we've just completed this flow, this entire flow of a model, a view getting the details from the model, controller, of course, calling this. What is pending? What is pending is the database code. So I have conveniently ignored that, but you have to fill this in. And I got an answer from you all right at the beginning, but just so that I am doubly sure that you know what to do, I'm going to recheck with you all whether you all know how to get this value or not. So first thing is, instead of hard coding the values, instead of hard coding these values, this is the code in get all employees. What would you be doing out here? I already got the answer to that at the beginning of my session, but I'm repeating myself purely because I don't want you all to go into the lab, ask the other people in the group, "Are काय करायचंय? सरांनी काहीतरी सांगितलं होतं ना, काहीतरी करायचं. तू केलंय का? तू केलंय ना, दाखव मला काय करायचं." Or in Hindi translation of that, "अरे क्या करना है?" So to avoid that discussion, I want each of you to do it individually. And which is why I'm having this discussion. So if you're not clear about something, please ask me here and there itself. First thing is, you need to return a list of employees. Instead of hard coding the values, the suggestion that came in was you open a data reader. So your select statement would be select star from employees. Then you go through the data reader, one record at a time. And for each record that you're reading from the data reader, you would read this value. So this line would be in a loop. This line would be in a loop. And instead of employee number equal to 1, what will this be? What will this be? This will be the actual value from the data reader. Instead of name equal to V, this should be the actual value from the data reader. So these values that I'm giving here, these have to be read in a loop. And this line is to be written in that loop where you are reading the data reader. How do you loop through all the records in the data reader? How do you loop through all the records in the data reader? Give me the loop for that. Suppose the data reader is called dr.
While dr.read.
While dr.read. And how do you read a particular value? Supposing I want to read the employee number.
By where class?
dr in bracket,
square
name of
brackets, in quotes, whatever the name of the column that you want. So I've actually literally given you out the code. So this is what you need to do in a loop.
So those common lines of starting the connection and all, it has to be repeated in every function, or can we write something
Yes,
global?
good, very, very good question. Very, very good question. Now, in a real life practical project, you will have that code also going into a different, layer, into a different class, and that will be in a different DLL. So the common code for, like, if you have to use a data reader, what would be the method that you are writing? You are writing a method called, let's say, get reader, which returns you a data reader. Now that code also can be, generalized, and you can say that the code that you will write will be the same. So what will be the change in there? What is the connection string? Secondly, what is the, the SQL statement, or whether it is a stored procedure, then the parameters to that, all of that can be customized, and that can go into one layer again. So in a real life project, that is exactly what you will be doing. The common code will go into another layer. Okay. But I am not insisting on that. I am not insisting on that because writing that common layer will take you some time. Will take you, it's not something that you can finish in half an hour, 1 hour or something. Because you have to look at all possible overloads. You have to look at, for example, now when you're calling a data reader, you'll have to take also what type of thing is it? Is it a command text? Is it a stored procedure? Does it have parameters? All of the things will have to be parameterized out there, and you'll have to write overloads which work with all different options. So I am not insisting that you write that, but in a real world project, that would be the way to go. Right now, because you don't have time. If you had 1 week time, then I would have told you, yes, do it that way. Because you have to do it today. You have to finish this today and show it to me tomorrow. Therefore, I'm not insisting on that. But with the rider, those who are interested can use that approach. Those who first finish working the simple way. And if you've finished working it the simple way, then try for that approach. Okay. Yes. So you would have what? This is your database. You would have one layer, typically which we call as the data access layer, and one more layer which would be your business objects. Business objects layer. Right? So the business objects layer will be your class employee that you write. That will contain the class employee that you write, which would have different methods. And this would call code from the data access layer, which would then go and talk to your different databases. So logically speaking, you could break it up into these layers. Okay. I am asking you to do what? Right now, what am I asking you to do? I'm going to ask you to write a layer which combines both of these. Okay, but in practical projects, what are the advantages of doing this, splitting it onto 2 layers? What will be the advantage?
Avoiding lengthy codes, repetition.
Reusability. One word. Reusability. So all your database code that you're interacting in the database would be reusable. So even if a business objects layer changes, you don't have to rewrite all that code all over again. Open connection, return a data set, return a data reader, right? Fire off a query, all of that you don't need to do that. Okay. So I'm leaving it optional. First, get it working with one. There is no compromise on that. Oh, I didn't finish that. You have to finish that. If that finishes, then look at the second one. So this was the first thing that we did. So you had a data reader. Get single employee. How are you going to do this? Get single employee. How are you going to do this? Yes, what code would we write in this one?
Select statement based on employee number.
Employee number.
So give me the select statement.
Select star from employee where employee number is equal to pass parameter.
Equal to the employee number that is passed. Excellent. And how will you read this value?
Using execute scalar.
Execute scalar is going to give you only one value.
Yeah.
You want multiple columns. No? Execute scalar would be useful if you're giving only one return value.
Data reader itself.
Again, data reader. But this time the data reader will contain how many records?
One record.
One record.
Okay, now there are two possibilities. Either it contains 0 records or it contains 1 record. So is there going to be a loop out here? Is there going to be a loop out here?
No.
No.
So what would your code be? Supposing you had your SQL data reader. Right? Supposing you had your SQL data reader. What would your code look? Assuming you have given command to run the command, you are done is equal to CMD. Let me write it down. SQL command CMD, let's say, right? And you're done. DAR is equal to CMD dot execute reader. So you got your reader now. Now what? Now what?
Create an employee object.
Hey, how do you read the values? What would be your next statement? I've created the employee object on top.
Simple dr dot
Command
read.
type.
Sorry. Give me the next line of code.
In if
Employee
condition,
obj
where-
is equal to
If dr dot has next is equal to true, then
All right. So here what you could do is if, not a while, but an if, because there's only a single record. So if dr dot read, what is dr dot read return? What does
One
dr
employee-
dot read return?
True or false?
false.
Either true or false. So if it could read a record, it returns a true. And if there was no record, then it returned a false. So if dr dot read, then what? Then what? Then read the value into the employee object. So here, instead of saying obj of employee equal to hard-coded value here, or instead of saying this would be what? What would this be? Equal to the value from the data reader. Acha, in the else, what would you do? Else meaning what? What is this now? What is else now?
Employee not found.
Employee not found. So decide how you want to handle it. You
By
might want to
build-
return. You might want to return null object back again. That could be one possibility. Or you might want to throw an exception. All right. So what would you like to do is up to you. Whether you want to throw an exception and then catch the exception in the code out there and say that there was no further employee to be read out there. That is one possibility. Second possibility is what could you do? Return a null object. So obj equal to null in that case and return obj in that case. So which means in your code in the controller, if it is null, that means there is nothing. Or in a try catch block. So whatever approach you want to use is entirely up to you. That's purely your logic of coding. Okay. To begin with, even if you don't give it exception handling code or other code, I don't mind, as long as if it's working correctly and if you get the value correctly, if that code at least is there, then I'm happy with it. That is the bare minimum I want. But those who finish that, then think about the other possibility as well. Okay, so that was a single employee. That's how you're returning a single employee. Either get all employees or return single employee. Okay. These are easy. These are easy. Insert employee. If I give you an employee object, have you all done code like this? Open your database code. Open the project of your database code. And there also, you would have done an insert employee. We took an employee object as a parameter. Have you done that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. An insert employee, which took an employee object as a parameter. So you'll find the code is identical. I'm giving you the same function to write. Only thing, no console.write lines there, please. No console.write lines. Are we clear on this? Update and delete are on similar lines. So I want this functional by the end of the day. Okay. I'm going to be using this in other examples also. In tomorrow's example and day after tomorrow's example, I'm going to be using this. So if you've not done it, then you're going to be having a little bit of trouble following what we're doing. All right, so please complete the blanks for me. I'm moving away from model binding. Okay, going in for a new project. The next one that I want to do is something that we have seen before, HTML helpers. Okay, so we have talked about them, but let's have a little more, example out here, which takes all of this. I have some ready code, so I'm going to copy paste from there. So let me add a model. Adding a model is, adding a class, and I'm adding a class called department and a class called employee. Okay. I have a department class that I have created earlier. I'm going to use the same class. And I also have an employee class that I have created earlier, and this contains some weird looking stuff. Okay. All right. Okay, before I make any change in this thing, I need to do what? I need to build a solution to give you the updated values in here. And let me add a controller with read-write actions. Okay. All right, now let me generate one for details. So add a view for details, MVC view, which is using details model class is employee. Okay, something that we tried before. Now, first thing that you will see here is that it adds on the top @model and then adds a model out here. Now there are a few other things that it's displaying here. So there's a HTML display for. Now if it gives you errors like this, no, sometimes the errors don't go away. Just close the that file and open it again. If that still doesn't work, just close the project and open it again. Sometimes it doesn't compile the code correctly. Okay, known issues with Visual. So now I'll take you back to the to the start, so to say. And you had these HTML dot, right? Different options that you had out here. So let's see what these HTML dots are doing for you. Okay, there are multiple such options out here, and you have all these options here. Okay, like there's a display and there's a display for. Now all of these are extension methods, right? And let's see what some of these would do. Like for example, if I said HTML dot, you have tried the editor for, right? Or you've tried other options out here. You tried a hidden for, the one that we gave out here. Okay. So you'll find that there are two of them out here. Like there was a, if you looked at hidden, there was a hidden and there was a hidden for. Okay. Or any of these methods, if you look at these are, there's one with for and one without for. So quite a few of these, right? Let's say text area and text area for. Now, what is the difference between the two? If I take, for example, let's say a text area or let's say a text box. Now, if I say a text box, see what it prompts me with. It's asking me for the name of the text box, the value of the text box, any other HTML attributes, all right, any formats that you wanted to pass, and so on and so forth. So, but if you take up the simplest one, the name and value. So name, for example, let's say I say txt1 and the value, right? So value could be, let's say, hello, right? This is what I'm actually passing out. Now, what do you see out here? What can you make out from this? If I just said text box without using text box for, what do you think it's creating for me? How is it different from the for? Yes. How is the text box, HTML.textbox, different from HTML.textbox for? What is your observation? I'm giving you HTML.textbox and you're seeing other variations of for. So what can you deduce from here? What do you see from here? Yes.
So this might be an independent text box.
What do you mean by independent?
It does not relate to EMPNO or any other.
It is not bound. It does not use binding. So all these other text boxes, they use binding. Now binding works two ways. Binding is always two ways. Binding is first, from your model, the value goes into the control. That is first part of the binding. From your model, values going into the control. So when you're displaying something, that is also using binding. And the second thing is when you submit the values, the value from the control goes into the model. Like we did in edit, post, or we did in create post. So values from there are now being sent back out there. So it's a two-way binding. Two-way binding meaning what? Read the value from the model, put it into the control. Secondly, read the value from the control and put it into the model. So these without for create you text boxes that are not bound, or create you controls, let me put it this way, that are not bound. Are we clear on this, everything? So if I wanted to use HTML.textbox for, so HTML.textbox for, what do you think would be the parameters with textbox for? What do you think would be the parameters for textbox for? What do you think this would take?
So func of like
Model
employee.
element.
Look at this. It takes a func of an employee, comma, T result or T property they're calling it. So take an employee as a parameter and return one of the properties from there. Why? How did it know that it should take an employee out here? How did it figure out employee? From where is this line coming in from employee?
So from line number 1.
We have
From this
model
@
line.
model. So here in this case, this automatically would now use this syntax. So take X as a parameter and return X dot whatever property name out here. Are we clear on this? So if I had to, for example, take name, so I could write down code like this. So this is not rocket science. What they're generating is not rocket science. This you can write down code yourself. Only thing is you don't have, no, you'll have to write down all of it. So which is why generating the code initially makes a lot of sense. All right, now look at the example. I've got some code. I'm not going to write down all of them. So we tried out text box and text box for. What is this line number 19? What is this doing? What is this doing? Line number 19. Is this also generating a text box? Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
so
sir.
what is the difference between line number 18 and line number 19? What is the difference between line number 18 and 19?
Razor code and HTML code. Line number 18 is razor code.
Using HTML helpers. Okay, I'll accept that. So there are inbuilt functions available in Razor like HTML dot whatever, and that's the one that you're actually calling. It's using a HTML helper. And in this case, it is directly giving out HTML. So both options are okay. Both options are okay. There's no hard and fast rule saying that this is better or that is better. If anything, this line number 19 will run faster than line number 18. Why will this execute faster than 18? Why will 19 run faster than 18? Yes.
So line number 18 will like eventually be converted into HTML.
Correct. There is an overhead of converting that into HTML. So if you know the HTML, you can use the HTML. If you don't want to use HTML and you want to use the HTML helpers, the HTML helpers will generate the HTML for you. And all the HTML helpers which are using for will actually generate, code that is bound to the model, reading the values from there. What is the name that is going to generate for this text box? What is the name that it will generate for this text box? For line number 20.
Basic.
Would be basic. Where is it picking up from? From the property. And that's what helps binding later. Okay. So you have got different options here. So sorry. You've got different options here. Check out the next one, line number 22 and 23. What are the difference here? What is the difference here again? Come on, simple answer. Don't look too deep. Checkbox is picking up where? It's creating a checkbox for you. This is picking up from where? Checkbox for?
From our employee.
From employee. So I have actually created one more property in employee called is active, a Boolean value. That Boolean value is now being set into the checkbox. So if you had values coming in from there, like a Boolean value that you'd like to display as a checkbox, you could actually do that as well. Okay. Look at the next one. What is this one doing? What are these doing?
Creating radio buttons.
Right? Creating radio buttons having the same name. BTN1 is the same name, but different values. What does that make it? If you give it the same name, what will happen now in this case? All three of them will be part of one set. So it cannot select two radio buttons. It will select only one of this set. The same thing I've done in this way. What have I done out here? What have I done out here? Okay, I have ignore the model dot. I'll come to the model dot departments. But if you can see model dot department, this is actually a collection of departments in some way. So what do you think I'm doing with this one here now? Where is this reading it from? Where is this reading it from? It's actually looping through the employee class. The employee class has a collection of departments. Okay, I'll come to what this is actually. I'll come to that in a minute. And in here, what am I doing out here? I'm just displaying the name and value. So department number and value. So what is this taking? This is the name of the, the text box would be department number, and item dot value would be the value that you would be showing out there. Right? This is how you're actually creating this. So the point I'm making in all of this is either you can create your own, code this way. You can create your own code this way, or you can use binding. Okay. Now, in this particular example, I want to actually display a drop-down list box. I want to display a drop-down list box. Now, why would I want to display a drop-down list box? in what situation would you need to display a drop-down list?
Multiple choices.
Yes, when there are more than one choice.
Typically, in a database, where would you display it? In a database, when would you display a drop-down list? In a
Foreign
database,
key.
in a foreign key. So for example, if I wanted to accept the department number, instead of asking the user to type the department number, a better option is to show him a list of departments, a drop-down list of departments, and ask him to select one of those departments. Advantage of doing so? Advantage of doing so? Why give him a drop-down list box showing him department names? Why do that?
Wrong department numbers won't be entered.
Absolutely right. So he cannot possibly give a wrong department number. You are eliminating that possibility of him choosing a wrong department number, because now he's forced to choose from that given list. Are you clear on this, everybody? Okay, now while displaying the departments, supposing I want to accept into employee table, you all have an employee table. In the employee table, I have department number being stored. But instead of the department number being stored, I want to show him a drop down showing him department names. I'd like to show him a drop down showing him department names. And when he chooses that name, automatically it should pick up the department number. What is the advantage of doing something like this? Why not give him a drop down of department numbers? Why give him a drop down of department names?
User experience.
Hmm?
User experience. I mean, like he won't know department numbers.
Absolutely. Because the department numbers may not be known to him. Like, after this batch is over, I'll probably remember Kaustubh because he's giving me most of the answers. He's interacting a lot with me. But if you ask me what was Kaustubh's roll number in CDAC, I have no clue what that is. Right? So, always identified by a familiar name rather than by an ID. IDs are generally generated by the system. So to a user, the IDs don't make a lot of sense. What makes more sense is a meaningful name. So which is what we're going to try and do out here. I'm going to show you if I had to accept values into an employee, then instead of showing a text box out there, how could I get the values into a drop down is what I'm actually trying to show you in this example. Okay. So first thing, you need to be familiar that if you want to create any controls, what is the HTML for that? You need to know that. If you know that, then only you can then possibly work with this. So every drop down, for example, has these options, and the option has a text and a value. Every option in a drop down has two things. What are they? Text and value. So text is what is going to be shown out there, and value would be when he selects that text, what would be returned to you? That will be the value. Okay. Now I'm going to show you this example in one of two ways. I'm going to show you the same example in two different ways. So what I want to do here is I want to pass to this view. I want to pass all the department names and all the department numbers. That is the bottom line out here. The department names and department numbers would be used by the view to create a drop down of departments. Okay. Now, one way of doing this is I go and change my employee class. I go and change my employee class and see what my employee class now contains. What does it contain?
INumerable of department.
An INumerable of not departments, an INumerable of select list items, which is called departments, which I'm calling departments. Now, what is a select list item? A select list item is an item in a list box, in a drop-down list box or list box or whatever. And every select list item has two main properties: text and value. Every select list item has two properties. What are the two properties? Text and value. So text is what is going to be shown. Value is when you select the text, what is the value it picks up. All right. So this is what I have. And I'm giving him a list of departments. Now look at my code in my this. So what is this called now? This is called departments. Departments is of type INumerable of select list item. So look at the code that I'm writing in here. To create it, all that I'm doing here is look at line 42. Look at line 42. I'm saying HTML.dropdown list for bind it to department number. So model dot gives you what? All the properties. Model is of type employee. I'm saying bind it to department number. And from there, pick up where should it be? Where should this list be formed from? Where should it be formed from? From departments, which is, yes, it was in the model class, which is what?
INumerable of
Select list item. So now the drop-down list box knows what to do. Now the drop-down list box knows what to do, because what does every select list item contain? What does it contain? Every select list item has two things. What are the two things?
Text and value.
Text and value.
Text and value. So it knows what to do. It knows what to do. Are we clear on this, everybody? Yes? Clear? Questions, if any? Ask me questions. I'll go back to this. I'll show you this line. Line number 42. Look at line number 42. What is it creating? Model.departments is using it to populate the values. Now, the moment he picks up something, the value would give you the department number. That value of department number will be stored into this department. So when you do when you read the value in your post, it will automatically pick this up. No questions? No questions? It's either very good or I haven't a clue. So I hope it's the first. So the first question is, where is the department getting populated? First question that I have for you is, where is this department getting populated? Where is this happening? Where is this happening? Where is departments getting populated? Where are the values for departments coming in? The values for that are coming in here. Where is this? Sorry, here. Values for that are coming in here. So what am I doing? I'm creating a list of select list items and adding items to them by hard coding values. Right now, I hard coded the values. But you know that when you write the code, you will not hard code the values. You will read it from the database. I can get away by coding hard coded values because I'm me. What else can I say? But you are not going to hard code the values. You're going to be reading this value from the database using a data reader and all of those things that we talked about earlier. Okay, after creating this OBJ departments, I'm saying, this employee O is going to be passed to the view. I'm saying O dot departments is equal to OBJ departments. So you figured out where I got my model dot departments from. What did I have to do? I had to physically put in the values out there. Clear on this, everybody? Clear on this? What else did I need to do for this approach? What else did I need to do for this approach? What else did I need to do for this approach? Yes. What else did I need to do for this approach? Yes, come on. It's there in front of you. All that you're doing is
Create
reading out.
enumerable.
In my employee class, I needed to go and say that my employee class also now contains an enumerable of select list items.
So rebuild the solution.
Yeah,
Rebuild the solution.
I'm saying
Sorry.
in my employee class, I had to start off by saying that my employee class, what is my employee class? What should it contain actually? It should contain employee number, name, basic department, properties of the employee. But I'm also saying that it is going to contain an enumerable of select list items. Now imagine this, an employee containing select list items. So if you join an organization, let's say whoever, let's say for example, I see Ganesh out on screen out here. Let's say Ganesh joins an organization. So Ganesh will have properties like name, number, basic salary, and Ganesh will have an enumerable of employees, enumerable of departments. Does that make sense?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. So why have I added this enumerable of select list items? Why have I added this? Why have I added this? Does Ganesh need this? Ganesh is an employee. Does Ganesh need this? No. Who needs it? Who needs this?
Admin.
Sorry?
Admin.
Who's
Drop down.
Yes.
Drop down.
Who needs this? This is required by the view. That line number 16, what you added, is not a property of Ganesh. Is not every employee doesn't have this property, but this is something that you have added for the view. So that my view should work correctly, I have added these properties. Such classes where you add things, not because your entity requires it, but because your view requires it. Who requires these things? This is required by the view. Such classes are called as view models. So what is a view model? What is a view model? A view model is a class that has stuff in it that is required by the view. Not because your entity required it. It's not because your entity required it. Who required it? View required it. So what we have created here in this case is an example of a view model. So write it down. A view model is what? Is basically a class that is used by the view to display the values. So you have added some things in there. Why? Not because the class needed it. Because who needed it? Who needed it?
View.
The view needed it. So what is the basic difference between a model and a view model? Basic difference between model and view model. Model and view model. Both are classes. Both are going to be used by views. But what is the difference between model and view model? Yes. Go on, attempt it. I told you what's a view model, but I have not told you what's the difference. You tell me what's the difference. Come on. What is the view model and the view model difference? A model is actually something that you create based on your system design, based on the system requirements. So you say, okay, this is the data that I want to store in there. And that mirrors real world entities. But a view model will contain not just properties of the model, but might contain additional properties that are required specifically for a particular view. Are you getting this?
Yes.
So it's basically a model class. A view model is a model class created so that a view can be shown properly. So that becomes easy to show. So what I've created here in this case, if you remove line number 16, then it's typically a model class. But with line number 16, it has now become what type of class? What type of class? View model class. So to save the value to the database, you might use your model class. But to display the value on the view, you will use your view model class. View model will have extra features, extra properties. Are you clear? So you might actually have two classes. You might have an employee class and an employee view model class. This is actually, right now I've just shown one, but you might actually have two classes, two different classes. Am I making sense? Am I making sense, everybody? In this example, what am I passing in my view model? What am I passing extra in my view model that I've added, so that the view can work correctly?
IEnumerable of select list item.
Correct. That IEnumerable of select list item. The select list item is typically a UI component. No? It is used by a list. It is not used by an employee. All right. So the moral of the story is what? If you want to display something in the view, and if your model doesn't have it, if you want to display something in the view and your model doesn't have it, then what do? You create a view model. Understood? Questions, if any, about this? Okay. Let's reset. I will show you how to do the same thing without a view model. I'll show you how to do the same thing without a view model. In the view model, what did we add extra? What did we add extra? What are the only thing that was extra there in the view model? IEnumerable of select list item. That's what you had extra. Yes or no? Now, what did you want to do basically? You wanted to pass something from the controller to the view. Pass something from the controller to the view. Have you learned of any other way of passing it from the controller to the view without using a model?
View back.
View back. View back. So don't change your model. Don't change your model. Put into view back. What do you want? What do you want to pass? You want to pass a IEnumerable of select list item. So if you don't want to pass it in the model, see what I'm doing here. One possibility I'm passing it where? Look at line number 33. Where am I passing it? See, this is what I've created. I've created a list of select list items called OBJ departments. Where am I passing it? One possibility is where? First possibility is where? O dot departments. This is O is of type employee. I'm passing it in the view model. I'm passing it through my model. And look at the next line. What am I doing on line 34?
Passing
OBJ departments. I'm not passing through view model. I'm passing it through
view back.
yes, the view back. So if I'm doing 34, I don't need 33. I'm showing you both, but you don't need both. Now let's come back to my code in the details. And now this is what we did. Line number 42 was what we did for the view model. Now, instead of saying model.departments, what will you now say? Instead of saying model.departments, how will you now get the value? How will you now get the value? Instead of model.departments, you'll get it from where?
@viewback.departments.
Viewback.departments. And that's what I'm doing out here. I'm getting it from viewback.departments. Simple. Right? Only thing syntactically, you need to explicitly cast this. It doesn't allow you to work it without it. So I'm explicitly casting it as what? Because see, it doesn't know at this point what viewback.departments may contain. It's a dynamic property, remember? So I didn't, it doesn't recognize this. So that's why I'm explicitly casting this. But if you remove the cast, supposing, just for your understanding, I'm removing the cast and check up the two lines. What am I doing in the first case? Look at 42. What am I doing? 42 is doing what? Look at 42. Where is it picking up from? Departments from where?
From model.
From model.
Employee.
44 picking up from where?
Viewback.
Viewback. But I'm saying for 44 to work, it needs to have an extra cast. But I can now use this 44 without having to change my model. Without having to touch my model. Whatever extra you want to pass it through viewback. And this is what this is doing. Are we clear on this? All right. Now, similarly, I've got code in the edit this thing. This is my edit now. I've gone into edit. So look at edit. Look at edit. Okay. What is line number 44 using here? What is line number 44 using?
Viewback.
This is using the viewback. And what is line number 45 using?
Model.departments.
Model.departments. So this is what? This is the view model. Are we clear on this, everybody? This is the view model that we are using. So this would now show up instead of a text box. This will not be generated code. This you have to write on your own. Okay, this will have to write on. You can generate the template. You can generate that scaffolding first, but you'll have to go and change this code. Automatically, it will not do that. So this is what we'll have to write out here to get it to work. Achha. Now this is done. Done. Now in the edit, all that you do is what? Receive an object of obj.emp. And automatically obj.emp.department number will contain the correct value. Now who's doing this magic for you? Who's automatically doing all this magic for you? Without you having to do anything, automatically the value being put in there. Who's doing that?
Binding.
Binding is doing that. Model binding, more specific. Model binding. So your code has not changed here. Your code here has not changed. What has only changed is what? Only what has changed is what? This line here. Are we clear on this, everybody? This line here. Of course, when you're sending the values to this, where are you first populating the values here? Would that be a get or a post? First, when you're showing the values, where would that happen? That will happen in the get.
Get.
So that's your code for get, right? Put the values into employee. And what is this part of the code doing? What is this part of the code doing? Populating the list of select list items. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Either use viewback or use model view. Are we clear on this? If you look at the code out here, I have hard-coded the values. You will not hard-code the values. You will write a method in the departments class, which is returning this to you. So this is what you need to do. So what you have to do is in 2 stages. First thing is you have to try out, the first example that we did, that I have, done with you earlier, without having a drop-down list box. No drop-down list box. Don't even think about a drop-down list box. That's the first thing that you'll do. Complete that code. Get it fully functional. The whole flow should work. All the pages. You should be able to go from index to create to, edit to details to delete, and all the links from everywhere should work fine. That is the first assignment that you have to complete. After you've completed that, make a copy of that. Don't change in that. Make a copy of that. And in the second assignment, you have to try and get in a drop-down list. All right. You can use either of the 2 approaches, either with ViewBag or without ViewBag. Don't use both. Use one of the 2. Or use both. Chalo. Get used to trying out both. And make it work. Any questions, any doubts out here? Okay, I just simply seem to have these memory flashes sometimes. I'm becoming so old, I forget more than I remember. But I think in one of the previous CDAC exams, something like this had come in that lab exam of yours, when you, at the end of the document paper, you have to do the lab exam and all of that. Something like this had come. I don't remember. Long back. But so at the end of this, a lot of you will ask me, sir, what could we ask in the lab exam? And my answer to you was anything that we've done from day one. But I remember something like this had been asked, one such example like this, with of course more options out there. But just old age, I forget so much. Sometimes I remember flashes in between. All right. So on that happy thought, let's end this session. I'm not taking anything more. I got about 7-8 minutes to go. I don't think I can start off a new topic and end it in those 7-8 minutes. So we're ending a little early today, 7 minutes early. Go have a longer break, 7 minutes more than that. Okay. I'm about to disconnect. Anything else that you'd like to ask me before I disconnect?
So, will it be very difficult to create binding using simple HTML tags?
Using what?
Simple HTML tags rather than using @HTML.
There you will have to give in the same name as the name of the property. Even that will do binding for you. You get what I'm saying?
No, sir.
The name, your HTML control has a name, no? So that name of the control will have to match the name of the property.
Okay.
And the value that you're getting will have to be the value that you read from the model.
Okay.
So basically you're doing manually what is being done automatically.
Okay, sir.
Supposing I take you to this code, let's say this code here. What did I do here? What is this txt1? What is txt1?
Name of the text box.
And what is hello?
Value inside.
So if you wanted to use binding here, binding like code here, then what will be the name of the text box? Suppose you want to show name, then this would be what?
Name.
Name. And what would this be? What would this be? Yes.
Model
dot name. So this code of yours is the same as this code of yours. Okay. How do you check it out? How do you check it out? You ask your best friend. You know who your best friend is, right? Yeah. Yes, Devi?
Yes, sir. Debugger. Run it and see.
Debugger. View source, view page source.
View page source.
So see whether the output that you get, whether the HTML that you get is what you wanted it. If that happens, then you can do it, no problem. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So I'll keep it back to the way it was earlier. right? But I'm just saying that you can do the same thing on your own. All right. Yeah. If no other questions, I'm ending at this point. And I will see you tomorrow morning. I'm not there in the lab. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Bye for now. I'll take about 5 minutes to copy the code. You can